And so it begins, another summer in the can. And now we reflect on the challenges and successes of 2024 as we begin to prepare for the 2025 season. Join us today as we share the issues, the stresses, and the rewards of this past summer. Camp leaders, win back your time to what matters most, your campers. Bolin's comprehensive accounting, back office solutions, and tech-enabled team free up your staff to focus on your mission. Visit bolinhq.com, that's BOWLINEHQ.com, to learn more and book a free 2-hour financial diagnostic. Remember what sparked your passion for camp? UltraCamp knows it's about the people, not the paperwork. That's why they built a platform to simplify your camp management. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. For us, in the world of summer camp, there is nothing more important than well-researched, well-planned, well-thought-out, and well-prepared leadership training. It's at the crux of all we do. It's how we deliver a safe, exciting, kind, supportive, growth-filled experience for our campers and their families. It's how we have our staff return year after year. It's how we make the biggest impact on the world around us. So join us as we delve into the world of staff training, the good, the hard, and everything in between. We're in it together. And we're back. Can you believe that we are already into September of 2024? Where did the summer go? Well, before we dive into any of that, let's take a moment to introduce ourselves. So my esteemed colleague, Gabrielle, I'll let you go first.
Hey Beth, it's so nice to see you. My name is Gabrielle Rail, and I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Waro. Camp Waro is an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains, and we focus on creating a positive environment for girls and gender minorities, and we do that while speaking in French and English.
So not just a little bit hard, extra hard.
Yeah, sometimes. Oui.
And I'm Beth Allison. I'm a former camp director, executive director, and now I'm a camp consultant, and I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro. My pronouns are she, her, and as always, I have a true passion for intentional leadership training. So, Gabz, I know that we have caught you just as you are beginning to come back to work
Yes.
after some much needed downtime following your summer at Waro. How was your summer?
It's funny because I really am just coming back. I just moved back into my apartment 2 nights ago, I think. One night ago. Where are we? I don't know. That's where I am at. And one of my old camp friends who's a teacher, actually she's a school principal now. About a week ago we were chatting and she asked me the same question and she said, "How was camp?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was good." And then she said, "She was like, is it just good?" And I was like, "Listen, I'll ask you the exact same question. How was school in June? And then we'll see what your answer is." And I just said, "Listen, look, I still love my job. I still love the kids. I still love most of the staff. I could do without some of
Mhm.
our families, but as a whole, I still love my job. But I am exhausted, and I think I was w- where I live. We have a lot of where our camp is. We have a lot of other camps nearby, and so twice a year we do a brunch, and we were hosting the brunch this year, and we all got to we catch up, and the fall brunch is always much different than the spring brunch,
I bet.
but the energy is different. And a lot of talk about chefs, the kitchen.
Mhm.
But when I was talking to some of the people there, I was saying I felt I was so cute in 2019 and 2018 because I always had a project or two I was doing at camp that I would spend an hour or two on, program development or staff or camper development, like whatever it was. And now, like those projects just don't exist. I can't work on anything really to move camp forward during the summer. It's still so much more, there's so much more work that is needed. I'm so much more required. Having a break in the day, that was also very cute. I used to take an hour off after lunch every day. That was adorable. I don't do that anymore. And I used to have a regular day off, which I'm try to have, but sometimes it just wouldn't happen. So but I think I'm catching on, right? Like I think I'm catching on to what the kids need. I think I'm starting to catch on to what the staff need. I think I'm starting to catch on to what the parents need. So for me, there's like light at the end of the tunnel, like how to get there, still figuring it out, but I'm catching on to what is needed, what adjustments are helpful, what adjustments haven't been helpful. And but still extremely busy. So I still love it, but I'm very tired.
And fair. You've earned it. You've earned
Thank
it.
you.
And all those things that Gab has to think about, adjustments to make, all this stuff, we're going to dive into that throughout season 12. So don't worry there. The summer for me and its lead up to it was exceptionally hectic this year. So I was back to all of the travel and trainings that I used to do before 2020. I felt like I lived out of a suitcase. And I ate a lot of fast food in the car or in airports. But it was so good to meet so many new people and to see old friends and train so many camp leaders. I taught a lot and I learned even more. And I was impressed by the staff of the many camps that I had the privilege of visiting and their desire to be a part of something special and their eagerness for campers to arrive and their energy and their willingness to soak up as much information and new skills as they could. I have no doubt that a lot of campers' lives were changed for the better because of these dedicated directors and their staff members. So it was really hectic and really busy, but really good. And again, my brain's been percolating for months about all of the topics that need to get covered next year, and in conferences throughout the year. So good summer. Also tiring, but a different kind of tired from Gab. Mine sort of ends as Gabs begins. So
Mhm.
got to do some traveling through the summer, which
Nice.
never got to do when I was directing. So it was
That's so
really
wild.
cool. I
The
know.
summer outside of
I
camp,
know.
I
It's
don't even
very
know.
strange, but Scotland was calling and we answered the call. So it was
Oh,
great.
fantastic.
Okay, so before we dive into the real tofu and veggies of this podcast, we're going to just stop for a break to hear from our dedicated sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to discuss some of the issues that we either witnessed or heard from other camp directors and things we're going to want to tackle this coming Camp Code season. We'll be right back. Camp leaders, do you often find yourself bogged down with bookkeeping, accounting, and other back office tasks, taking precious time away from what matters most, your campers? Imagine a solution that frees up your staff to focus on creating impactful and memorable experiences for your campers. That's where Bolin comes in. Bolin offers comprehensive accounting back office solutions designed specifically for camps. Our tech enabled team handles everything from payroll and bookkeeping to financial reporting, compliance, expense management, spend control, and more, allowing your staff to passionately pursue your number one purpose. With Bolin, you can streamline your camp's financial operations, reduce stress, and ensure your team is free to make a lasting impact in campers' lives. It's time to win back your time and work with a financial partner that truly understands camps. Whether you're a for-profit, not-for-profit, overnight, or day camp, Bolin has a solution for you. Visit bolinhq.com, that's BOWLINEHQ.com, to learn more and book a free 2-hour financial diagnostic. The report is yours whether you sign up or not. Let Bolin take care of your accounting needs so you can focus on what truly matters, your campers. A special offer from UltraCamp for Camp Code listeners. Get ready for next season's staff recruiting with the Camp Experience Wheel, a powerful tool to prevent burnout, boost retention, and make sure your staff feels supported. Download it for free at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. You need tools that work as hard as you do. UltraCamp's platform is packed with powerful features, keeping your camp running smoothly and efficiently, so you can focus on what truly matters. With UltraCamp's powerful tools, you're in control. Automate tasks like registration and billing, easily manage authorized pickups, create custom payment plans for your camp, generate reports to get key insights, streamline hiring with built-in background checks. Get back to what you love. UltraCamp helps you spend less time on admin tasks and more time creating unforgettable camp experiences. Ready to see if UltraCamp is the perfect fit? Schedule your free personalized demo at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Okay, we are back. And before we dive into too many details, we just want to take a few minutes to list some of what we saw and
Mhm.
experienced this summer. So, Gabs, what did your staff do really well this summer?
Mm. I think work with our leadership team, communication was a lot higher, trust was higher. That's something that we've been
Excellent.
working on for many years since COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, everybody, just to let you know, this summer during staff, our end of the summer staff party, um, staff asked me to dance with them, and I just between you, me, and everybody that's listening, I was not popular since COVID. Before COVID, we were friends, but then after that, we weren't friends anymore, and it was really, really sad for me. And they were like, "Hey, do you wanna come dance?" I played it cool. I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." But I literally ran out of the lodge, made a phone call to my partner, and I was like, "Oh my god, they wanna dance with me." I was so excited, and then I came back super cool, and I was like, "Sure, yeah, whatever. I'll dance, no big deal." So the sort of the ice has thawed, I think, around feeling like authority is the villain.
Mm,
We're still obviously being extremely transparent, doing all of that kind of work, but they appreciated the support, and so the communication was a lot clearer. We were quite intentional in our hiring this year. That feedback was not a privilege or right. It was necessary when you're a staff member. Sometimes we had staff members that resisted clear feedback, and I can't work with people that we're problem solving together. So we worked really hard to hire people that would be down for that. But as a whole, the communication, they did such a great job, and our leadership team really worked on building out trust with them. So that was very nice to see. Plus, I was asked to hang out during staff party, so also felt
oh,
very, very good.
excellent. You're back. You're
I'm like, yeah,
back.
I had to play cool, everybody. I think I did a good job.
I have a super short one, but I was
Yeah,
really excited to see it. So I saw camp staff more comfortable in costumes and singing or doing skits than I have seen since the pandemic started. So it's like after several summers
nice.
back at camp, they're more relaxed and a little more willing to be silly and be okay with that, and to try to do what they can to make camp more fun for the campers. And turns out they enjoyed it more too. But I saw a couple summers where that was really tough, because they had missed those kinds of, years in between. So that was really fun for me to watch. What else did you see? Something good?
Yeah, yeah. I think that I mean, I love the costumes part. I would say I saw that as well. I think that there was a real want to make other colleagues, other peers feel included,
Mm,
feel part of it, and
nice.
that the adventure, if you will, was like getting everybody to be part of like the camp experience and whatever that
Amazing.
looked like. So
Yep.
I think that was really neat to see. I will say that there was some staff members that were maybe new to our organization, that being around so many people was still very, very difficult. And that's something that I saw that is quite intense, I would say. Like their reactions were pretty intense to the need the camp reality of being in community, but as a whole, the majority of people, their main goal was like how like let's do this together. And there's a great TikTok like trend where it starts off with saying our boss says that this is a solo job, and you have like two people pressing start on a printer, and there's two people that are like um accepting like a library card at the same time, and it's like they're fused at the hip. I saw that a lot, but in a really positive way. Like it was
Mm,
quite inclusive, and it was really nice to see.
nice. That's excellent. My last great thing that I saw was a real willingness to participate in training sessions. So I know a lot of adults say that the average age camp staff are not capable of face-to-face conversations, that they prefer to be on their phones or are more comfortable with earbuds in their ears. But I really found that there was no real coaxing to get folks to chat, to share, to dream together, as long as they were given a topic, a specific partner or a group, and expectations were front loaded. And I really noticed, because I'm a people watcher, that they enjoyed it, that it helped them to bond and to learn that they weren't so different from one another, even with international staff. And I think we just need to be really intentional about offering those opportunities for them to get to know each other formally and informally during staff training. Like, they were excited to have these opportunities, perhaps a little bit hesitant at the beginning, but they went in with both feet. So that was really exciting to see. All right. So, Gabs, do you have anything more positive, or should we move on to some things that could use some work?
I think we can move on to some
All
things that can
right.
use some work. Yeah.
So,
Um,
tell me what you saw that
yeah,
you're going to be working on next year,
well,
or that you heard from other directors at that breakfast that you
there,
had.
oh yeah, we have a couple there. So I think this is one that I find really interesting and fascinating on a developmental level. So before COVID, if you were 18 years old and you had a group of 12-year-olds, let's just say, typically that 18-year-old, if they had like the typical skill set of an 18-year-old camp counselor, paid attention to training, et cetera, could anticipate not just the needs of their campers, but the behaviors of their campers.
Mm,
They
hmm.
understood it. So if they are acting sort of erratic or they had big feelings or whatever, they could really be like, oh yeah, I knew somebody like that, or I was like that. I think it's not something that we haven't talked about, but I really saw it this year clearly, where that 18-year-old is just as surprised by the 12-year-old's reaction as I am. They can't
Mm,
relate to that 12-year-old because the developmental stages were not the same for the 12-year-old as was the 18-year-old because of the interruption of that COVID had.
okay.
And so we're really seeing, and this is where I'm talking about the communication, where I would work with some staff members and we both take a step back and I'd be like, that's interesting. And they'd be like, that's just straight up weird, Gab. Like, I don't even understand what the heck they're doing. And I was like, yeah, I see. I'm trying to use the word interesting here, but sure. But they don't have, a lot of the times before COVID, I was able to talk to some of the staff members and to be like, oh yeah, like this is how I was. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember a year like this. Like, it was easy to anticipate patterns and behaviors because they went through it themselves. Now it's way more of a shock. It's very confusing. It's they don't understand it. So I think that that's something that I'm certainly going to be working on more this year. And it's not that we're going to know how to bridge that gap, but I do think we need to create tools to help staff members feel less overwhelmed by the unknown, because it is a constant unknown when we're looking at a lot of our campers. And what's typical is a very, very hard bar to set when you don't, what's typical for you or as an 18, 19-year-old, 17-year-old. And it's just different than when they were kids compared to the kids that they're taking care of. It's a hard bar to see. So, or it's a
Mm,
hard line to focus in on. So I think that's something that they struggled with. Truth be told, I struggled with it too, but I'm much more calmer around those things, and but it seems to panic them for good reason.
mm.
It's quite uncomfortable. So a lot of stress and anxiety around camper behaviors that are just not recognizable to them.
And we're going to talk about that
Oh yes,
sometime in season 12.
I am stoked to talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, great, great, great. Um, I did see some progress since 2020 in making visitors feel welcome at camp, because the 2021, 22, 23, things were pretty darn shaky. But it depended on the camp. Some were much better at it this summer than others. My guess is that these camps were trained to specifically deal with visitors. And B, there is still, work to do across the board. Camp is that place where every new face should be welcome. The minute somebody is spotted getting out of their vehicle, whether it's an expected visitor, a health inspector, a future parent popping in on their way to the cottage to check you out, they should be greeted and welcomed by every single staff member they pass on their way to their destination, which is usually the camp office. Folks should be acknowledged warmly, and staff should ask if there's anything they can do to help, should ensure that we're supposed to be there. That, this says so much about the camp community. And I have found over the last decade or so, so even pre pandemic, that young adults need more practice and more training in this to become more comfortable with it and to understand that it's really an incredibly important part of customer service in building community and in setting an example of how people treat each other to our campers. So that is going to be on my training list for next summer
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah.
What else did you see?
Um, I think with staff training, there's I mean, it's the type of campers that we're getting also. I think there's a lot of parents that read the title Gentle Parenting, but never read the book Gentle Parenting. And because of that,
Hmm.
I've noticed that I saw some, I would say, where the parents might have described this behavior as anxiety and stress. I would describe it as a temper tantrum and not understanding boundaries and not understanding community living. And so I think that again, with our staff members, there's going to be some training around how to handle um, these campers, but also how to handle our, I would say, upper management training on how to handle the families that
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not against, if you read the book, it's very clear about boundaries and it's very clear about expectations. So but I think I was like, where the misunderstanding is. And one of my friends was like, I think they just read the cover. And I was like, I think you're right. Actually, that's a really good point. But there's definitely, I think there's I definitely think for me, what's interesting for us, Beth, is a podcast on upper management, training upper management to deal with parents that that are have a gentle parenting mindset, but without the information or education on how to do that, and set clear expectations with families about
Mm-hmm.
community living, and then to help our staff members to deal with that as well. But there's certainly the peopling of children. It's almost like there's no responsibility that is put on the child, and there's no responsibility put on the parents. Not obviously every children, not every
Of
parent, but
course.
there's
Yeah, of
definitely a
course.
trend that I'm seeing. And I really am realizing how much education I'm doing with parents, once they calm down and they're not angry with me after we have a conversation, and then I make them love me. But after that, then there's some learning that happens. But it's I'm they're struggling, and it's obviously trickling within into our onto our grounds as well.
Okay. There's another good topic. That's going to be a big one. Um, Creativity. Even though I saw more camp staff willing and excited to be dressed up and do costumes and dancing and singing and be silly, it is one of the topics I was asked to cover in most of the training sessions that I ran. And directors were finding, and I have to agree, that this generation of staff struggles with in person creativity. So they're so used to technology. I mean, we all are now, having things played out for them and being somewhat passive in their creativity that they witness every day. So asking them to create characters, costumes, make those magical moments, particularly in downtimes without the use of cell phones, computers, video games is somewhat challenging. And I think this topic will be something that leaders will need to devote some time to in next year's staff training in order to allow staff to discover and practice these skills that those of us of a certain age take for granted. So, those of us who grew up without all the gadgets, who were outside anytime we could be, or we were told to be outside by our parents anytime we could be, and we had to create our own fun, we need to do some research into understanding how kids and teens experience creativities these days so that we can be more understanding and then can offer them opportunities to learn to be creative, innovative, and inventive without the use of technology, which doesn't exist in great quantities at summer camp. So, something we'll need to think about, I think, going forward.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that. I think that there's like sort of almost like a mental block that happens. And yeah, it's just so interesting and fascinating. A lot of it has to do with the fear of failure,
Hmm.
social
Oh, yeah, there's
anxiety. There's
many
such a,
layers to that onion.
yeah. But I definitely also witnessed that myself. And it's so wild because we have so many more hours in our training. We even have extra days in some of our training. We have
Hmm.
workshops. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I need another week
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on top of what we already have, which is not possible, right? So it's kind of like what are
But
some creative
yeah.
ways to do training with your staff when you don't have the extra time to do that sort of mentorship throughout the summer,
Well, and so
etc.
many directors kept saying to me, I don't get it. Like, this
Yeah,
is what we did when we were growing up. It's like, that's the part that's the part we're missing, is
yeah,
that those of us who did it grow up that way need to take time to delve into, the fact that they don't grow up that way. That's not how it works anymore. So how can we use what they know, and excite them
yeah.
to be creative without all the technology stuff? So just
I
something I
think,
think we're going to need to work on for sure.
yeah, and the I don't get it. This is what I did when I was younger. It starts to date you. If you're
Oh,
saying that,
yes,
everybody, you're dating yourself, even if you're 29 years old.
that's right.
You're dating yourself. We don't have the same experiences. That's it.
Mm-mm.
That's it. So we have our
Yep,
job is to see what the problematic is, and then,
that's
but
right.
I don't get it. I mean, I hear you. Let's figure it out together in this season.
Exactly. Exactly. Did you have another one there, Gab?
I mean, yes, I think we have so many.
I
I
have two more. So you
Okay.
tell me what you got.
All right. Well, I'm gonna share just a little, like, a fun little story, actually, to go with it, because it's just wonderful. And it's something. So one of the difficulties that I've noticed is staff members having a hard time with, like, the little wins,
Mm,
the little magical moments, the little hilarious. A lot of them are so stressed on what's next,
mm,
anticipating like something horrible to happen. I know it trickled into my leadership team, whereas my leadership team typically stress they have under control, but there was big stress within my leadership team this summer, which is fine. They're a fantastic group and they did such a great job, but stress is so much higher. And so managing stress, I really saw, as we have talked about this for a couple of seasons for sure, but I really see it is not something that is dealt with one session. It's something I want to pay more attention to. But here's a little fun. The reason why I realized it was stressful, this came up, was because this was such a funny story that I saw a bunch of my staff members and leadership team laugh. And I was like, oh, this felt so good, not because of the story, but because just to see them let go,
mm, mm-hmm.
And so here's the story. I wasn't there for it, but I was there when the telling of it. So there's two 9 year olds. They're about to leave. It's their last day of camp, and they're packing up. And one of the 9 year olds says to the other, like, how, like, did you like this summer? And the other one said, oh yeah, I had a lot of growth. This is also how some 9 year olds are talking. So everybody,
Amazing. That's
yeah.
amazing.
And then the other one said, oh, how so? And she said, well, I used to be snake homophobe, like, I
Mm.
used to have snake homophobia, but I don't have that anymore.
Just phobia.
Yeah, but she said homophobia.
Oh,
So she's like, I
okay.
had snake homophobia. So the other camper said, like, sort of gasped, and she said, and whispered, are you homophobic? And she was like, well, I used to be, but because thanks to camp, I'm not anymore. And so obviously she wanted to say she had a
Yep.
phobia of snakes, but
Yep.
she had thrown in the homophobia. So anyways, I overheard that story and I saw a bunch of my staff laughing, and I was like, it just felt so nice, and we were just giggling. And then I realized, oh wow, my poor staff, they're really stressed. I'm noticing right now that they're having such a good time, and it's a relief to me. Like, oh, these poor bodies and minds that are holding
Mm-hmm.
on to such anxiety and fear. And we don't have an answer for that, right? But I do think talking about it, I'm interested in chatting. I have a little bit more thoughts on that, but certainly I saw stress is still so high,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something to take seriously.
And we here at Camp Code, we support all snakes.
We do. All
All
snakes.
snakes.
All,
We support
yes,
them
we
all,
do. Yes, we do.
no matter who they love. Um, and that was one of my points too, Gab, was stress
Yeah.
and mental health is
Yes,
still a thing.
it
And it
really is.
always will be, I think, going forward.
Oh,
And directors are still struggling with how to best support their staff members and their campers.
yeah.
So, as an industry, we need to be doing all the research and deep dives that we can, and then share the best ideas with one another as often and everywhere that we can, for
Yeah.
sure. I have one more, Gab. Do you have one more? If
I
not,
have one
that's
more.
totally okay. Way you go.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to bring it back to the camp director, or people that are full time.
Mm,
I'm still, some of my colleagues are leaving the industry, and I'm proud of them for doing so. I have two of my colleagues that are leaving this year, because it's too much, So one, it's the board. Both, actually, in both cases, it's the board is the problem.
hmm
And then, like I had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the work is just more. I mean, that's my experience. It's my
Yes.
experience with my colleagues. So maybe there's somebody that else out there that's not their experience. We'd love to hear from you. Um, but it, but I do think if we're talking about mental health and we're talking about stress management, et cetera, my mission this year is how I don't want my summers to be as busy. I know that I said, I don't take rest periods during the day. That's not my value system. I don't agree with that. I agree with regular days off. I agree with taking breaks. I think we're better bosses when we do so.
Yes.
And so that's not my value system. And I think it's truly a mission for me on making sure that myself, my full-time staff, my leadership team, particularly, how is this sustainable for years to come? Within my
Mm,
organization, we're going into succession, and really thinking about, what Jackie and Dawn did 25 years ago. It's so different than what we're doing right
mm,
now, and
hmm
what Madeline did before that was also very different. I mean, she had a completely, it was very much a part-time job that she was doing, and now in my organization we're four full-time people, and I feel like we're barely keeping up. So there's a sustainability conversation that I want to have, and again, I do have thoughts, and there's things I'm putting into practice, but it's all theoretical, and it needs to happen. But we we also have to care for ourselves, and that's part of
mm,
training, that's
hmm
part of role modeling. So for me, that's something that I'm also interested in, and I'm seeing, because my pals are having to make the tough decision,
Yeah.
and I'm proud of them. They're putting themselves first, and there's so many people that put camp first, and you can for a small period of time, like I
hmm
do in the summer, but it can't be all the time. That's not the way to live. So this is an issue in our industry, and I think it's an issue in a lot of industries that serve people, especially children.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. One of the most discussed issues I heard from directors this summer was the
Mm.
problem with initiative taking.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So we still have a lot of work to do to help our staff recognize when and how to jump in, begin a task without being asked, deal with a problem coworker, find the courage to approach the boss with concerns or fears. So many directors have shared that they feel their staff are sometimes stuck. And you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but they're so afraid of making a mistake. They feel this need to be
Yeah.
perfect in every situation. And it's quite frankly
Oh,
clogging up the works. It's
it is.
making it more difficult for directors to understand when staff are struggling. Important things are getting missed because nobody's stepping in or stepping up without being specifically asked. And I
Yeah.
think we need to create ways that we can teach initiative, give them opportunities to practice, make it understood that it's a huge part of the job. And again, like we always say here, it's okay to try something, fail, but try again. So I've already started working on a session for next year about how to teach staff to take initiative. So I think
Mm.
that's one of the ones that I think we still need to dive into.
And I love that topic. It's one of my
hmm
faves. Yeah.
All right. So there you go. A list from us of topics we're going to be diving into this season. No
Yep.
doubt we have missed a few. So please let us know what you would like us to talk about.
Hmm.
But before we wrap up, here is season 12's first Gabrielle Rail recap.
Recap. All right. So, recap of mine: tired but happy. Beth, suitcases, fast food, and summer camp trainings / Scotland. You know what? At Camp Code, we love to look at some problems and what are the solutions. But in this episode, we also we didn't come up with any solutions. We just listed a bunch of great stuff and some things we'd like to tackle. So some cool things: communication with supervisors, being more inclusive. Hey, you know what? In our industry, we take costumes and being silly seriously, and that is on the
Mhm.
rise. And engagement in training sessions. Y'all, if we looked at this list 3 years ago, this was not the case. So we're going to take the W on that.
That's
Now,
right.
some things that we want to probably focus on is creativity, dealing with perfectionism, dealing with parents, as well as stress management and the real gap generational gap between a 14-year-old and a 18-year-old. They exist. We're here to help you talk about those issues. There are issues that we're dealing with as well, and together we know we can come up with the solutions. Thank you for listening to our first recap of the season.
Yay. Makes me
Yay.
feel all warm and cozy inside. All right. So, as we wrap up, just a reminder of how you can get involved in our podcast and tell us your thoughts on this episode using the hashtag camp code. And you can also tell us any topics you would like us to discuss. And I'm sure you've got some for this year. Any guests you recommend we have. And we're going to be having a guest host almost every other episode. So, who do you recommend we get to come and talk to you? And any great leadership training tips that you have to share. We would love to hear from you because we say it every time. We're all about sharing in this industry. And if you found our podcast to be useful, we'd love it if you left us a rating and a review in your podcasting app. So here's how to contact us if you want to contact us individually. Gab, where do they find you?
They can get in touch with me via email at info@ouareau.com, ouareau.com, and you can check out where I work at ouareau.com.
Thank you. You can email me directly at beth@gocamp.pro, and I'm on Instagram at topaz_fae, F-A-E. And for our next podcast, we're going to be diving into how to reflect on your season that has just passed and what to do with that information. Our final segment on each podcast is, as always, a best practice for leadership training. And again, don't forget to send your best practices our way so we can share them out. This week's best practice comes from Gabrielle.
Well, this year we have now. This is our second year using this new protocol, and it has done wonders for our organization. So if you're having issues at your camp with cell phones because your staff need to use their cell phones for music or even to take pictures, that was our case. And there was certain people that, like our head of dance, we wanted them to be able to use music, and using their cell phone was the easiest way. We quickly realized though that who was allowed and who wasn't allowed started to become very blurry, and we could see cell phones here and there, which is my biggest pet peeve. Not the cell phone thing, it's telling people not to do things that they know that they're not supposed to do. That's my biggest pet peeve. So we purchased 5 secondhand Android cell phones, and we had a docking station at our office. They all had fluorescent cases that were very obviously, they're all orange fluorescent. So you could tell if they were our cell phones or not. And people could sign out these cell phones for programs, for group nights, for et cetera, et cetera. And so it made it really, the cell phones are a great tool, but having your own cell phone was a problem. We got a Spotify account, and this really, really made a difference. Then our staff members that had to have cell phones, like myself and one of our logistics coordinator and our other camp director, we put fluorescent orange tape on our cell phones so that it was easy to recognize that our cell phones were official cell phones on camp property. And we saw a difference. Last year, there was a couple of cell phones that I would see that wasn't sanctioned, if you will. But this year I didn't see any. And it was definitely a cost on our end, but we had our wonderful Accent DBA that did a search online and found some that were helpful. And this year it just really made all the difference. So if you're looking at reducing your stress and reducing you having to tell staff members to put their addictive devices away because they are addictive, this is a really helpful tool for us.
Great. Great idea. Thanks, Gab.
Thanks.
Camp Code is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network, and you can check out all of our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcasts. Thank you again for joining us on this journey as we work to give our campers, staff, families, and camps the best experiences possible. And we're really looking forward to another season ahead. Thanks for the listening, friends.